see a good amount trickling in, everyone. I will kick us off. Hello and welcome to the North American Meat Institute's webinar, Building a Framework for Digital Success, sponsored by Cat Squared. I'm Clarissa Moreau, Director of Regulatory Services for the North American Meat Institute, and I will be doing introductions and audience Q&As for today's webinar. We're looking forward to a great discussion. I welcome everyone to use the chat feature during this webinar. Comments can be directed only to panelists or attendees and panelists. We'll have time for questions at the end, so please feel free to submit your questions at any time through the Q&A feature, but not the chat. And I will read the questions to be answered by the speakers. As a reminder, the webinar is being recorded and attendees will be sent directions for accessing the recording after the webinar and how to access the slide decks as well. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Cat Squared, for their generous support for this program. Cat Squared is a software company focusing on helping food processors meet their continuous improvement goals with smart factory technology, building seamless platforms that connect manufacturing technologies, create transparency, and deliver superior value to customers. We are excited to be partnering on today's webinar and want to thank them in advance for all of their insights. With that, I'm happy to introduce our guest moderator joining us today, Vernon Smith. Vernon Smith grew up on a family-owned poultry farm in South Africa and has extensive experience in the poultry industry. Before co-founding Cat Squared, Vernon earned a bachelor's degree in computer science and business economics, as well as a master's degree in computer science before working as a food industry process control specialist. As CEO, Vernon has integrated Cat Squared's individual software modules into a cohesive MES solution for meat manufacturers, offering complete visibility of plant floor processes. Under his leadership, Cat Squared has been honored with the Governor's Award for Excellence in Global Trade by Governor Asa Hutchinson and twice recognized as a finalist for Arkansas's Business of the Year. Welcome, Vernon, and thank you for being a guest moderator for this event. I will turn it over to you to introduce our speakers.
Thank you very much, Clarissa. Before we get started, I would just like to thank NAMI for putting together today's webinar. We at Cat Squared are very excited to be a partner and a supporter of the NAMI Protein PACT initiative. Today, we're very lucky to have three very qualified panelists on the webinar. I've been fortunate to work with them on several projects over the past 15 to 20 years. First, we have Donald Clark, who is an enterprise architect at Alithya. Donald has more than 25 years of experience in implementing ERP systems and over 19 years with Dynamics AX and D365, which is obviously the Microsoft products. He's worked in different project roles ranging from pre-sales and analyst to application expert, functional architect, and solutions architect. Cat Squared has built tight integrations with Alithya's Dynamics AX platform and worked on a number of joint implementations for customers where Cat Squared's MES and Dynamics AX platforms provide the customers with a fully integrated solution. Next, we have Everardo Fernandez. Everardo is the Senior Vice President of Operations for Bachoco and OK Foods. Since 2010, Everardo has served at the corporate level of Bachoco and implemented processes and technology to drive continuous improvement and ensure product safety and quality and grow team members' capacity to achieve their highest performance and growth within the company, ultimately maximizing profitability. Cat Squared has been fortunate to partner with Bachoco and Everardo as we implemented our solutions at all of the Bachoco processing facilities in Mexico, and now we are working on a similar project for their US operations. And then finally, but definitely not least, we have Mike Lindsey, who is the Director of Manufacturing Systems for Perdue Farms. Or should I say, Mike is the Senior Director of Manufacturing Systems for Perdue Farms, with responsibilities for all plant technology-based systems within the Perdue Foods, reporting to the CIO in the IT department. His role includes delivering manufacturing system solutions to the company that employs the latest technology solutions. I have known Mike for more than 20 years and have been fortunate enough to partner with him on a number of very successful projects which leverage digital technology in order to drive continuous improvement in Perdue's poultry and pork operations. I'm going to ask each of the panelists just to give another short, tell us a little bit about themselves. Donald, if you don't mind starting.
Certainly. Thank you for the kind intro, Vernon. Like Vernon mentioned, we've partnered. My organization's partnered with Cat Squared to deliver high performance solutions in the primarily in the poultry industry, but my expertise extends into pork processing, several different poultry implementations that we've done. Most notably, the Costco poultry plant that we built from ground up in Fremont, Nebraska, and went live back in 2019. And I'm looking forward to, I'm honored to be part of this panel and looking forward to helping answer some key questions around how to digitally transform your organization.
Thank you very much, Donald.
Thank you.
Next I'll ask Everardo, if you don't mind.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Everardo Fernandez. I have 25 years of experience in poultry. As Vernon said, since 2010, I've been working with implementing CAT in Bachoco. So we already implemented that in Mexico in around 11 plants or 12. It is 11, I guess. And right now we're working in the U.S. operations, OK Foods, in order to implement that in 2 of our plants, and there may be more to come. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here. Sorry, and I will be happy to share whatever I can offer for you guys to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Everardo. Mike, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Vernon. Thankful to be here today. I look forward to this webinar. I think it's going to be fun. Mike Lindsey, I've been with Perdue for 37 years, responsible for technology, like Vernon said, over 20 plus sites now. And we're doing some really good things. I've got some really good folks on the team that they do 2 things. The number one, they keep the lights on, and then we try to make them brighter by doing projects. So maybe today we'll talk about some of those experiences. Thanks, Vernon.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. We have a number of prepared questions that we're going to ask the panelists. We're going to go from one to the next. I'll ask each panelist their question, and then I'll hand over to each of the fellow panelists to see if they want to add anything to that topic. We're going to start with Donald. Donald, your first question, what are some of the main challenges that customers face when implementing an ERP solution?
There's a number of challenges that we face in an ERP implementation. I like to, when we could spend a great deal of time, like you and I talked about earlier, going through each one of these. But anything from defining the scope correctly and keeping the scope within boundaries and not allowing scope creep, is always a concern in any major project. I think what's come up a great deal lately that I think my fellow panelists can elaborate on once I kind of get us started is the area around user adoption and change management. And particularly important when you come into an organization that's got a very mature legacy system that's possibly been highly customized with a large number of users who have a large number of many years experience doing things the same way over and over again. Not the easiest task to uproot everything and say, hey, here's a new way of doing things, regardless of how much more efficient it might be or how much ROI you can provide to the equation by doing it a new way. That user acceptance and getting buy-in from the end users, the people on the floor doing the day-to-day transactions, absolutely critical, and absolutely critical to have a good change management process in place that allows you to help you overcome that entropy, for lack of a better word, that organizational, hey, this is the way we've been doing things for the last 40 years type thing.
Excellent. Yes, Donald, I would say that holds true for really the implementation of any solution or technology solution in the shop floor. I know we have experienced that when implementing our MES solution.
Sure.
Everardo, I know you guys, when we started working with you back 15 years ago now, you were just getting started on rolling SAP out to all your factories. I don't know if you have any comments on Donald's response.
But I will say just that, whenever you're going to start to integrating your floor or control production control system into SAP or any ERP system, you need to try to design that, I will say, the easiest way possible, because you always need to think about, okay, you can get all that kind of data, you can transfer all that kind of data, but are you going to be able to keep it up during the years, and the people that is going to be in those positions they're going to be able to keep it up? There may be some turnover. So if you make a system very complicated to operate and to maintain, then eventually you may lose the system. So you need to think about that as well. So
that's a great point.
Excellent comment. Yes, Mike, I see you nodding your head. I know you and I have had discussions about this in the past. So would you like to add your comment?
I'll say one little thing, because I know we got a lot of questions we want to try to get through, but I had a CEO one time saying, Mike, don't build a monster we can't feed from an operational perspective. So, we want to collect a lot of data, but let's collect the right data, the meaningful data, the data that can, really impact change, and not try to collect everything you want to collect, because you can't feed that monster all the time.
Absolutely. And you're going to get inundated by information that nobody really uses. Eh? Excellent. Good. Very good. I will move on to the next question. This one for you, Everardo. Would you mind giving some examples of how Bachoco and OK Foods have leveraged digital technology to drive continuous improvement in your processing facilities and the business as a whole?
All right. I'm going to go back to the years that we started implementing this. So before we had this type of system working in the plants, I'm going to use the word, the cycle of the information that we were getting was on a weekly basis. So from a continuous improvement standpoint of view, we just had in a year 52 chances of improving or in doing something different based on the information that we were getting in order to get better. So by having these systems, we started having that information daily, actually every hour or every 10 minutes if we wanted to. And that basically gave us the chance in order to change our processes in a faster way. So if we were analyzing that in the past and that was going to take us like 6 months to get something better, when we started running these systems, it may took us like a week and a half, because it was easier for us to analyze and to get some actions in place in order to get better. So that's I would say as a general scope, that will be something that it was very helpful. Now we applied that type of information of the way we were getting information to some other projects, such as implementing SQF, which is the GFSI system that we just put in place after we just started with GATT. And we implemented that all over the plant. So we were able also to put some data in place, some reports in place that was going to help us to make sure that the SQF system was being performed the right way. So we had reports, alarms, everything was set up in order to be able to keep up with that system. We also implemented later on some continuous improvement program. A real program, not just the data collection system. And with that program, we train people on black belt, green belt, yellow belt. So those guys were able actually to start getting the data needed out of the system and analyze that data in some other software, right? In order to make plans for improvement. And after making the plans, they actually had the information in order to prove that they were getting there, that they were getting better. So it was not just seeing the gaps and making plans. It was actually the deal that we were able to show the improvements in real numbers. So that was, I would say, one of the best deals, because that's what the owners are looking for. They are looking for facts, right? I mean, if we're far away of our goals? Are we getting closer? Are we getting there? What are the benefits? So, and we were able to prove that, right? So I will say that that's the benefits of having that system. Vernon.
Yep. And I guess that's the fundamentals of the continuous improvement cycle, where you do plan, do, check, or study, and then act. And the more frequently you can do that, the more you can drive those changes. Mike, I think we've done some projects with you guys, and I know you've done many in your operations following that same paradigm. Do you have any comments to add to Everardo's?
Well, I mean, I think he's covered the big points around, when you're getting data more real time, you can make effective business decisions faster. So, if you're waiting a week, you're trying to drive the car. Let's say your plants are like a car, and you're driving that car 100 miles an hour, but you can't see out the windshield. You're looking at the rearview mirror. How effective are you really going to be? When that curve comes, you're going to run off the road, you're going to go in the ditch, you're going to be all over the place, and then you're going to read the report next week saying, Mike, you ran in the ditch. So you can't change fast enough for changing business conditions on a plant floor if you're looking in a rearview mirror. You need to look at the windshield. You need to see what's coming at you and react faster. So I think that's what Everardo is saying is his company is able to make changes faster with this information. Is that a fair statement, Everardo?
Yes, it is. And yeah, you just said, I mean, that is going to give us the speed to take action. It's going to give us the flexibility. Sometimes you just have to change from one day to another in certain things. So you can do that as soon as possible. And you become more accurate on your decision making. Right?
Yeah. You can measure the results of your decisions faster as well.
Oh yeah. You can make a plan, you can work the plan, but if the plan's not working, let's change it. Let's modify it. And if you've got that information coming in faster, you can modify quickly.
Excellent. That's great. Donald, I think, obviously ERP is not as real time as manufacturing, but I'm certain similar things apply to your.
We can be quite real time. And, if you think about a typical integration between an MES like CAT Squared and an ERP like D365, Microsoft Dynamics 365, how real time do you want to be is really based on, I think, one of Everardo's, and I'm sorry if I say your name incorrectly, Everardo, I'm working on it.
You're good.
Okay. One of his points was that, hey, you can collect all kinds of data in an ERP system and a shop floor system, but how much of it do you collect? How quickly do you collect it is really determined by how quickly can you assimilate it and turn that data into real, actionable knowledge, right?
Yep.
And hey, we have times where every half hour is fine. We have times where it's got to be live. It really is dependent on the particular situation of how quickly we need to have the decision makers be able to have access to that data and make good decisions.
Yes. Excellent. Very good. Mike, your question. In your role, you obviously have to balance multiple priorities. So when faced with several competing tech priorities, how do you prioritize your goals?
First and foremost, we have to look at return on investment or return on invested capital. We want to make sure that we're applying that small development team resources in the right areas. So we try to make sure that when we do a project request, we understand what the scope is, we understand what the benefits are. Then we look at all of our options relative to timing and availability. So if resources are tied up on other high priority projects, we let the business know, hey, look, I can work on this and I want to work on this and we want to help you, but it might be June before I can get to you. But another option is I need to bring in a partner like CAT Squared or Alithya or some other partner that can help us do faster. Now, as you all know, you do it internally, there's one cost. If you do it externally, there's another cost. So we try to manage those costs and options and we partner with the business to make sure they understand what all's out there, that we want to help them. but we got to stay priority on those highest payback benefit items. Let's say also, when you're working with 22 manufacturing sites, you're going to get a lot of requests, and their requests are going to come from all over the place. So we try to make sure that when the business is asking for things, we understand what those requests are, but we also ask that question, are these requests aligned with the strategic? If they're not aligned with the strategic goals of the company, then I'm going to put a lower priority on assigning resources to it. Not to say that we wouldn't stop if we had to. We got a fire, we got to put the fire out. But I'm talking about we try to work the plan as much as possible by being strategically aligned.
Absolutely. Donald, you and I are probably on the other side of that coin as vendors to these companies, but I'm sure you've experienced a similar scenario where companies are, balancing those priorities. Do you have anything to add to Mike's comments?
I mean, I'm just going to echo what Mike said. I mean, we work with a great many companies who do have competing requirements for technology, endeavors and upgrades and things like that. And what does it boils down to? Like, I'm going to just echo what Mike said. I mean, is it strategically aligned with our goals, our company goals? Does the ROI make sense? Do we have the resources available to us internally to be able to effectively deploy a new technology or a new system? Those are all questions that we work with our clients to effectively answer, day in and day out.
Excellent. Yeah, within Cat Squared, we've also over the years developed a process where we work with our clients to calculate those what we call value drivers, opportunities, and the ROI, right. And does it really make sense? So it's not just, we partner with them to help them gather the information to make those decisions.
Right, and even within the implementation, once a decision's been made, for example, for an ERP deployment, ERP can take on many different, you can have many different functionalities you want to bring to light. And we do the similar what you do, which is help people make decisions that make sense. Does it make sense to turn on this module or that module? And there we go.
Yeah, critical. Yep. Everardo, any comments on your part?
Yeah, something that I want to add. Something very important is that we as processing managers or IT managers, we need to find the way of speak the business decision makers or the owners of the company's language. So whenever we speak about the new system and new technology, if we just speak about the technical data, they may not buy it. Some of them may, some of them don't. But in order for everyone to buy that, we need to be good enough in order to translate all the technical data, all the system functionality, and all that kind of stuff into a business language that they are used to. In order to get the sponsorship from them, or in order for them to buy it, right? And if we can do that, then everything is going to become easier from that point.
Yeah. Speak their language. That makes a lot of sense. Yep. Excellent. Very good. Right, Donald, we're going to move back to you again. What advice can you give businesses that are starting their digital journey? And I guess as a follow-up, would you give different advice to a business that has already started this journey? And what would you say if a business is trying to build a strategy to take it to the next level?
You remember I promised you in the beginning that I was going to keep it short, right? And you're asking me a big question.
That's where you just dropped that promise, eh?
Well, I'll keep it. I'll be concise. But I think number one, when you're starting off on a journey, we see this quite a bit, where companies they've outgrown their legacy systems, or they're coming to end of life in their legacy systems, or things like that, end of support, and they're being forced into a decision to basically, replace their existing technology. One of the most important things is you want to select a partner to help you do that, that's got specific industry experience, right? And referenceable industry experience. so that you have, you're talking common language, and you want someone that understands your business and's done it before, many times before. You want to be able to make sure that you're allocating enough internal resources to help that along. Internal resources, what we call a core team, but the core team that has enough time available, that management supports the time it's going to take for them to help with, to walk through the different business processes, make the right decisions about how to set things up, make the right decisions around what should be in scope of the project, things like that. You want to have a good change management program in place so that you can help reduce that user resistance, and you can help increase the probability of a success on the project and user adoption on the project. You want to make sure the core team is comprised of the right people that know the business, people that can make decisions. And a lot of times, some of our most successful projects are those that the core team was 100% dedicated to the implementation, because you're looking at a very long process. It's not something you do in a few months. It's something you do it right. You're just going to spend a year or more, transforming your business, right? And Vernon, you know this. Absolutely. Based on our friends we worked with most recently. And you want to leverage, best practices as much as possible, and try to keep people from thinking about, hey, this is how I've always done it, so let's make the new software, whether it's the MES or the ERP or a transportation management solution or whatever it might be. Get people out of the mindset that they have to do things exactly the way that they're doing them now, because more than likely the best practice is in a particular application is going to not be the way you're going to engage in that process differently than you're doing it now. Try to keep people focused on meeting the business requirement, not just replicating their existing systems, right? Because anybody really can, you can do that. You end up with a ton of customizations. You end up with you can certainly do that. You can certainly say, hey, we're going to give you exactly what you're doing now and exactly the same way you're doing it now. But what you end up with is a highly customized, not so supportable system in the end. So, excellent. And the last point is make sure that you're trying to standardize processes as much as possible, especially in a if you have multi-site organization. So that's what I got.
Excellent. Yeah, that's sage advice. We've experienced all that, Don't pay a vendor to learn your business. Get people who know your business inside and out, and put the right resources on the project with the right skills and commit them to the project, and without a doubt. And excellent advice. Everardo, I know Bachoco has been on the digital journey for many years. Do you have any comments to add?
Well, Donald almost mentioned everything. I'm just going to reinforce a little bit.
Sorry about that.
I will say that having the scope definition properly, that's a big deal. Once the company takes the time in order to do that and to plan the project with a good scope definition, that needs to be done, because then you can start moving forward from there and making sure that you are targeting whatever you define, right? And another one I'm just going to mention as a recommendation is using PMI best practices for any project. That's a good reference. And Donald mentioned several of them, right? Having a change program in place, having change management in place. PMI gives you some reference in order to being able to perform all those kind of things in the right manner. So that's all I have to say, basically.
Excellent. Thanks, Everardo. Good stuff. Mike, I think you've for many years been kind of driving that digital transformation within Perdue and creating multi-year plans. Can you comment?
Sure. I think both Donald and Everardo hit the nail on the head with the things that they were saying. But I want to try to cover a couple of things that I would probably add on top of that is, and one is around the business process reengineering. I don't know if that came across as strong as I would put it, but if you don't, as a call it a change agent for your company, force the business, and I say force the business, to look at the way they run their business and ask the hard questions. Do we really need to do this? Can we use out of the box, off the shelf technology? Do we have to customize? Because if you go down that customization road, that's when projects spiral out of control, because you keep going, okay, I'm going to let this scope come in. I'm going to let this creep in. I'm going to let this creep in. And the next thing you know, you got a monster you can't feed. I'm going to go back to that analogy again. So limit customization, not just to make sure that your project is successful, but you can sustain and maintain what you built and implemented over the long run. Because the more customization you have, the harder it's going to be to upgrade. So keep that in mind. There's a cost of making the change. There's a cost of keeping the change. So that's got to be factored into your total cost of your project, not just your initial cost, but your ongoing cost. And then again, I'm going to have to say, I love what Everardo said around talking to your business partner and making sure they can understand what you're saying. Sometimes, you go to the C-suite and you're talking technical and they just don't get it. You've got to understand the business part of this change and explain to them, okay, if your business customer says, I've got to have this customization, I've got to have it, then let them speak to the additional cost and timeline ramifications and all of that are going to impact your project. Does that make sense, Vernon?
Very good. Yes, absolutely, Mike.
That was perfectly said.
Yes, most definitely. Excellent. Very good. Now, let's move on, Everardo, for you. How do you determine what data is important and what KPIs drive value in your business?
Right. On that, I will say this first, Vernon. Having the technology is one thing, but having the emission properly defined, the goals properly defined, that's a different thing, right? So it doesn't, if you don't have all that already defined, even if you have the technology, you can lose, you can lose targets, right? Because you don't have the targets anyway. So the first thing is you need to have properly set your company goals, your department goals the right way. And you need to make an exercise of saying, okay, if I want to achieve this type of goal, what do I need to do? What are the A, B, C, D's, and E's that I need to correct in order to get a X, So X being the goal and the other ones being the KPI. So once you define that, it is going to be very easy for anyone to say, okay, these are the KPIs that actually matter. If you don't do that exercise, you may find yourself with a lot of data that eventually you're not going to use it. You're just going to have it there, right? A good KPI is the one that is going to tell you if you are getting closer or far away from the goal. And if that KPI, if you just have a data that is there, but it's not telling you anything, then that may not be the right KPI at all.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've heard the term analysis paralysis, where people are just inundated with data, but they're not using it right. They're not looking at those key things. So it's critical.
And the KPI has to be also sensitive to changes. Sometimes we put certain KPIs that in order for that KPI to be moved, there has to be a huge change in something in order to move that KPI. If we do have them like that, you will never have the chance to change something. But if you have the KPI in a certain way that is so sensitive, so if it's a critical process, you have to make that KPI very sensitive. So you can notice that immediately if something changes or gets out of track.
Excellent. Thanks, Everardo. Good comments. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Well, I always have something to add, Vernon.
Excellent.
I would take it from not just a KPI perspective, but anytime you're trying to collect data from the manufacturing floor, make sure it's right and actionable. We all want to take data to the lake. We all want to build a data lake so we can do analytics and reporting and maybe do some machine, learning and do some predictive analytics. But there's a thing called a data swamp too. And so the next thing you know, you've got all this data in there and you're not using it and it's just not adding any value. So I know that there's some folks that would love to identify every KPI from the beginning of the plant to the, from receiving to shipping, and then document that and then start collecting data on it. My point's more of, let's find the data that brings the most value to the business. Maybe there's a problem area with yield and we want to track that. Then let's get some yield information in there and present it to the people so that their actions can be aimed at improving the process and optimizing production.
Excellent. Donald, I know in the ERP layer, there's a lot of KPIs that can be generated, but how do you keep your customers focused on what really makes a difference?
Well, first of all, Everardo and Mike, man, right on comments. And, we find we have a process at Alithya that's part of our methodology that we deploy, that we engage in very early in implementation, where we get reports and analytics and dashboard and every catalog with our clients. What reports do you run? What analytics do you run? What KPIs are you tracking? And we have them justify each and every one of those.
Excellent.
What do you do with it? Do you take any action based on it? Do you make any decisions around this particular measurement, this particular report that you generate, or this particular dashboard you have? And it's amazing. The original list can be literally hundreds of different things that different departments are measuring. But when we're done having them take a critical look at it, that list is always a great deal smaller. If we do it right. Now, some people just want to just keep getting what they're getting because they're used to having a particular report. But when they see that, hey, we can do this report that you look at once every 6 months, we can do that for you, but it's going to cost you X amount of time and money to do that.
Makes
they
them
think
focus
twice about it. But compelling them to, and for lack of a better term, really justifying the reason for that particular KPI being captured and measured in the first place is an incredibly valuable exercise. It keeps people focused on those things that they can actually do something about.
Excellent. Yeah, I know we've been on many projects where the customer project manager comes to us and says, we have to have these dashboards and KPIs.
That's right.
And when you drill into it, you don't know who uses it and where they use it. One thing I will say with both Everardo and Mike, they are excellent at asking those tough questions to the business. And so when they give us a requirement, it's a real requirement. But many project managers don't do that, so you get this screed of requirements and they haven't validated it and haven't asked those questions. And it makes a huge difference to the project.
That's quite true.
Very good,
quite true.
Very good comments. Yep. So on the back of that, Mike, it takes us to your next question. Can you give us some examples of how Perdue has leveraged digital technology to drive continuous improvement within your operations?
Got a couple of a long answer on that one, but I'll say that we started out about 3 years ago really looking at digital analytics, Industry 4.0. What's the smart factory of the future? And it was all around, we need to collect more machine data. And so we talked to a lot of partners out there. Cat Squared, we've talked with you, we've talked with the Google team, the Microsoft team, the AWS team, and we finally landed on a product to do some IoT, Industrial Internet of Things, and started collecting machine data. We started in deboning, and we started collecting sort of like things like speed of the line, downtime, loading efficiency, throughput, all these kind of things. And then started loading that into the cloud, into the data lake. And then we started looking at not just locally, but globally across the enterprise on how we could use that data. And Vernon, we've done deboning projects since 20 years ago. How do we take that information off the floor, get it on a scoreboard so we can show people how they're performing, and then get the business to coach folks for improved performance. But when you're working with automated deboning machines, there's no people to coach. It's now more of, okay, how are we operating these machines, and are we operating them effectively, especially with automation and technology? So I think we were able to see trends when we ran it through the models, the data analytic models, and we were starting to see where people were doing things to shoot themselves in the foot. Like, okay, how come every time we speed the line up, we cause downtime? Because you've gone faster than what the process was designed for. So keep your hands off the speed limit, the gas pedal, and run it at a more consistent speed, and you'll get more throughput and less downtime. And we saw that from a lot of the data analytics. So
excellent.
Last thing I'll add on the data analytics platform is the tools, the ecosystem that we selected and used for manufacturing is now the same tools that the rest of the business is using. So, partners in finance and sales and marketing and the quality teams, they're all using the same tools. So we sort of set the direction for Perdue, the direction relative to what tools, what technology. We had a vision, we sort of went out and started transforming the business. Now, getting the business to go from the clipboard to the scoreboard is a whole different process, but that's another question.
Excellent.
I'm gonna steal that from the clipboard to the scoreboard. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one. We'll keep it on the process side first, and I'll ask Everardo if you want to add anything to Mike's comments, and then we'll pass on to Donald.
Well, I'm not so sure if it applies for the question. In my mind, it makes sense, but I'm just going to say it. So as we are having a lot of data, it is also, and I don't know if the words are okay. The data analytics can help you out in order to, based on some references that you can put in place, can help you out to sort out that data. And based on that, maybe give you some alerts in advance. Instead of having somebody going there and check data or KPIs, actually you can make the system work for you. And the system coming to you in order to tell you, hey, based on your parameters that you define, based on the analysis that I did, you're doing well, or you're just getting out of track, And I don't know if that applies for that, but it's what I kind of have in my mind.
Everardo, I'll comment on that. I think you're on the right path, because where we need to go next is not just giving the information to, say, managers or associates on the plant floor, but how do we feed back that information to the process and automate that feedback control? So if the systems are getting out of control, we would alarm people, send messages to pagers and texts and emails. And we're getting so many of those, we find that people actually turn deaf to that and they ignore them. Mm-hmm. So how do we just take the information back to the process, improve the process more from an automation perspective? So I think that's where you're going with this. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
And Mike, ultimately that's Industry 4.0, right? It's that feedback loop that then improves the process, and ultimately it won't be people that are making those improvements.
Yeah, I've talked with some plant managers that's like, if I could take the people out of the process. How many times have you come in and first shift sets all the machines to one layer the way they like it, then second shift comes in and says, we're going to do it totally different. And it's that's the communication, training, and education that you have to do with the talent that you have.
Absolutely. We had a very interesting project with a customer in the UK where in automatic deboning, for some reason, first shift would end really well, and second shift yield would drop, and they just could not figure out why. And it was exactly that. The maintenance guys came in, they said, I've just started my shift. I need to justify my day here at work, and they calibrated or set the machines. Not that they need
the machine the way they like it.
Yeah.
Yep. This is the way we run on second shift.
Exactly. But it took us forever to analyze and find the reasons. And so excellent. Donald, over to you. Any comments?
This is great stuff, but we do a lot of work with IoT and feeding things like OEE measurements, overall equipment effectiveness measurements. And one of the points that Mike made, if you set your tolerances too narrow and you're alerting people over and over again during the day, you are it's just noise to people, and so. How do you come about and say, hey, I want to set the right limits on this process. I want to alert when something truly extraordinary happens that needs attention. But we're, people, Microsoft and other folks with machine learning and different and an IoT really working toward that automated, hey, I'm a self-adjusting machine, like a autonomous machine that allows me to take the human person out of that element. Those are things that people are actually working on to help improve the quality of the output of a process or a machine.
Yes, excellent. Clarissa, we're bumping up to Q&A time. Do you have time for some more, or do you want to?
Yes, I'm glad you gave me a minute to jump in. I was about to give you, you guys are doing so well, and I don't see any questions in the chat yet. So I was going to give you about 4 more minutes, maybe time for one more question. And this is my prompt to everyone here. The participants, if you have some questions, feel free to start pinging them in the Q&A feature, and we'll break in about 4 minutes to give time for those questions as well. So maybe one more question, Vernon.
Okay. Well, this question's Donald's. You got to open and you get to close, Donald, and we'll give everybody a chance to comment. Can you describe some of the best practices for integration between MES and ERP?
I think that's a great question. We've integrated with your MES, but and not just in live protein like poultry and pork and other areas of integration. We integrate regularly with the MES systems in different industries as well. And the best practice really boils down to making sure that the MES partner and the ERP partner collaborate heavily with the business process owners around where the boundaries of functionality lie, right? What does ERP do best versus what does MES do best? I mean, in poultry, for example, MES is excellent at yield calculations and traceability and scaling and weighing and labeling and things like that. What is ERP good at? ERP is typically, your mothership of the transactions, where you can hold all of your financial transactions and costing information, product definition, things like that. And so as a best practice, I don't want to spend too much time here because I want to give Everardo and Mike an opportunity, but you really want to make sure that you've set those boundaries of functionality and design a solution that allows the MES to do what it does best and the ERP to do what it does best, and create efficient, integrations between those.
Thanks, Donald. I agree. I couldn't agree more that clearly defining that boundary and sticking to it is critical.
Right.
Everardo?
I don't mean to jump in front of Everardo, but I would say that there is important information in the ERP systems that I sort of call it above the line and below the line. So below the line is really this manufacturing data, how throughput, runtime, downtime, yield, dates, those kind of things. But above the line is that costing information, like how much does it cost to make this product? What are the right parts? What's the right recipe? All of that data needs to be shared between the ERP down into the plant. And there may be projects that you're going, hey, man, I want to know if we're profitable while we're making the product. And so you've got to do a lot of integration between your ERP level and your plant level. You don't want to reduplicate all of that data. I mean, that would be, then you'll end up, what if it's wrong or different? And then you're trying to do reports and the plant says, oh, it costs this, and corporate says, oh, it costs that. You're going to get into that kind of battle. You don't want to be there.
Absolutely.
Right. One of the things we teach people is our consultants and our clients, when we talk about integrations, is who owns the data, and there's a big difference between replicating data across two systems and simply referencing data. You know what I mean?
Yes. Anyways. Yeah, that's what I was about to say, Donald, is, I think the delineation needs to be functionality, but the data needs to be brought together to give the full picture. There's no question about it.
Right.
Yep. Everardo?
A couple of comments. One, regarding what you guys were saying, is that I'm going to put it in a simple way. One good practice is there should be just one single source of data, right? Now, how that data is uploaded or what data is uploaded, that's a different story. And do not duplicate reports from both systems. I mean, if you already have a report out of one system, that's it. That's the good one. Now, or if you're gonna have the report in the other system, that's the other one. But if you start using two reports of two systems, even knowing that the source data is the same, eventually you're going to have some issues, or somebody's going to stop using
Contradicting
something, or the other one is going to start using the other.
I call it the Perdue salute. You know, which one's right?
And the other one is, even knowing that we're collecting a lot of data at the floor level, we need to segregate the data that actually makes sense to upload it to the ERP system, and which usually is the data that is related with the cost. And somebody may say everything is related with the cost. Yes, we know that, but that particular data that has to be in the ERP system. So I would say that segregating that data is a good practice as well. If not, you're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of work and equipment or servers or you name it, whatever you may need.
Yeah, not generate return. Excellent. Wonderful. Well, Clarissa, over to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to all of you panelists. At this point, we will open it up for questions. Please remember to use the Q&A feature to enter your questions for the panelists. And I do have one that I would like to ask the team here. NAMI did a LinkedIn poll connected to our webinar today. Of the 4 challenges listed, the largest number of respondents, so about 33%, identified the lack of buy-in from senior leadership as the biggest hurdle for implementing new technologies, which we were talking about, you guys have all sort of touched on in today's webinar. And the second largest hurdle mentioned from the survey at 28% was cost. So lack of buy-in from senior leadership as the biggest hurdle, and then cost. So those two challenges are often interrelated, since leadership will not buy into projects without a solid ROI. And you guys have all sort of touched on this already. But if there's any more that you can provide, I'd like to ask if the panel can please provide examples, maybe something specific where the ROI had been realized and strategies for measuring the ROI.
Can I say something on that?
Yeah, any one of you. It's for all of you.
All right. So I will say that it goes back to speaking the language of the owners. Now, if we can explain them in the way that they can understand, because they do numbers. I mean, they do know about profit. They do know about making money. If we can translate the technical stuff into the business stuff, it is going to be easier for them to buy this in. I mean, for me, that's the biggest struggle, right? Once you do that, it is going to be easier for them to tell you what they need from the project. So it is going to be easy for us to say, okay, this is how I calculated the ROI, and this is how it looks like. Once I understand your needs, and once I show you how this type of projects can help us together, you know? So for me, it's kind of understanding how, the business language. That's
I agree with you.
That's my deal.
Everardo, I agree. You know, what are the 3 things that management's always going to ask? Hey, Mike, how much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? And what am I going to get for it? And if I can't put it in those 3 simple terms, then, you know, I'm starting at a deficit in the conversation. So we've got to break it down into cost, time, and savings. But I will tell you, the number 1 complaint from CEOs is time to value. So how long is it taking IT to deliver the projects that we're trying to deliver on? And if we come in and say it's going to take 6 months, well, that's too long. How do we go faster? How do we deliver faster? How do we deliver at a lower cost? And how do we get the most benefit out of what we're doing? So I think that tying those 3 together always has to be a consideration when we're working with the business.
Mike, I think I would add, like Clarissa mentioned, cost, but I don't think any business would turn down a project with legitimate ROI based on cost if the ROI was there. But I think a lot of companies, a lot of leadership don't believe in the ROI. I think you made a comment to me a while back that if Perdue had 20% of the ROI that they were promised, they'd be rolling in money. So I think a lot of times people sell projects with these amazing ROI numbers, but there's not a lot of follow-up to see that that was really attained. And then slowly but surely, leadership becomes a bit jaded and say, it looks great, but can I believe these guys? So it comes back to what Everardo is saying. Are we putting it in their language? And are we?
And I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with that too. And you look at a lot of our projects, and you'll see, hey, what are the objectives of this project? Rarely are they stated in ROI terms. Their objectives of deploying ERP are, well, we have these 3 legacy systems that are coming to end of life, and we want to eliminate them, or we want to operate from an integrated environment rather than, all these disparate systems, things like that. So the ROI is the actual ROI calculation. I'm agreeing with Vernon. Even when it's done, it's, it's not necessarily common that you see it followed up on, right? There's a lot of implied ROI. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Well, if you're very passionate on a project, you can make the numbers say whatever you want them to say. And so sometimes we're making feeling or passion-based decisions based on fact-based decisions. But let's say we have 2 projects that have the same ROI, the same payback, the same cost, and one of them is a technology. I think sometimes the C-suite will shy away from technology projects because of past project history. So if those projects have gone, over time, they've taken longer, they've cost more, they didn't deliver, they're all going to play a factor in the decision-making process or the approval process. So we have to take that into account when we're managing the projects, that we stay on track, on time, on budget, and deliver what we said we were going to deliver.
Excellent.
Great answers. Yeah, I think all of that is so relevant, not coming from your background, but somebody in a quality assurance or food safety role that has tried to explain, hey, I need this new quality system. Can you please approve all of this money for this whole new system? A lot of what you said today is just very relevant, just on a larger scale. So it's just been a pleasure talking to all of you. I just want to end with one last question. I know we only have 1 minute left, but if you guys can all keep it really concise, this is just a general question for each of you briefly, is what would you say is, I'll start with Mike, is your company's vision for digitalization in the future, and what technologies do you see playing out the most significant? And that question could be for each of you. Just what do you see in the future coming down the pike? So Mike, if you'd like to start briefly.
Ooh, so that is I wrote a lot of points here, but I would say that we're starting with Industry 4.0 is the base for our decisions going forward. How do you do that digital transformation? And there's a couple of concepts. Number 1, have a vision. Number 2, if you're going to choose IoT visualization of data, make sure that you can share that not just locally, but globally, so you can compare plants. If you want to build an infrastructure, make sure it's easy to use. You don't want tools that the general person can't use, because then you'll have a talent issue. But you have to bring in the right talent to facilitate that. So making sure you're bringing in the right folks or you're training the team that you have. So you have to upskill in certain areas. I would also say that culture in your company is going to be a challenge. So you have to address culture. So when we talk about digital transformation, we try to factor all of these things in. And there's more. I mean, there's data governance, there's OT security, and I could just go on and on of the things that you sort of have to look at when you go down that digital transformation roadmap. But I don't know if that touched on a few. Vernon, Donald, Everardo, you agree?
No, I'm just going to agree with you. I think that's right on.
Yeah, I do agree with you as well. I will just emphasize on the talent. I mean, yes, we're talking about the technology and Industry 5.0. At the end of the day, those are tools, but we need to be sure that our people can manage that, and they are capable, and they are trained, and they have the knowledge to keep up with that. So, I mean, we can have everything, but if we don't have the talent, then it's going to be useless. So, and we'll just emphasize that.
All right. Well, that is all the time we have today. Thanks again to our speakers and to all of today's attendees for your input and participation. I know today's attendees found great value in the perspectives and information offered. As a reminder, attendees will receive an email with the link of the recording to this webinar, as well as how to access the slide decks, This concludes today's webinar, and we hope to see many of you again soon. Thank you so much.